Neighbor continues to trespass after being asked not to. I need to get this off my chest because I'm absolutely losing my mind. My neighbor is the most entitled person I've ever met, and I've had my share of bad neighbors. It started not long after he moved in. I live on a corner lot which I bought because I liked the space and privacy. The neighborhood is new and I work from home, so I figured it'd be peaceful. Then he moved in. I recognized him from high school. Not a friend, just someone I vaguely remembered. He recognized me too and started waving like we were old buddies. At first I thought it might be nice to have someone familiar next door. Big mistake. The first time I noticed him cutting through my yard, I thought, maybe he's in a rush, whatever. But then it kept happening, every day, like clockwork. I was sitting in my office one morning when I saw him casually stroll through, his coffee mug in hand like my yard was a public park. My dog barked like crazy, which made him stop and look around like he was annoyed, and then he just kept walking. I tried talking to him. I walked outside one evening when I saw him heading to his truck. "Hey, can you not cut through my yard?" I said. "I'd really appreciate it." He looked me up and down and said, "What's the big deal? It's just grass." "It's my property," I said. "You've got plenty of it. You're not using it all." I stood there dumbfounded. He walked off like it was nothing. A week later, I was in my backyard cleaning up some branches when I heard a loud motor. I looked up and saw him riding a dirt bike through my yard. I yelled, "What are you doing?" He stopped, pulled off his helmet, and said, "Testing it out. This grass is perfect for it. Use your own yard." "Can't. Too close to the house." Then he took off again, tearing through the grass. I started setting up cameras after that because I couldn't trust him. The cameras have a feature that announces when someone's being recorded. I figured it would scare him off. It didn't. If anything, he seemed to find it funny. One afternoon, I saw him walking through again while I was out watering my plants. I stopped him right in the middle of the yard. "You've got to stop doing this." "Relax," he said. "It's just a shortcut." "It's not your shortcut." "What are you gonna do, put up a wall?" "I might." "You're uptight. Always home, always watching. Do you even work?" "Excuse me? I never see you leave. Must be nice, huh? Sitting around all day while the rest of us bust our asses." I didn't even know what to say. He walked off before I could respond. Then there's his truck. He drives a company vehicle and parks it on my side of the street. I don't care where people park, but he doesn't even park near his house. It's always right next to my driveway. I think he's trying to avoid being seen on his own cameras. He'll park, cut through my yard, and go inside like it's completely normal. A few days ago, I was mowing my lawn and he pulled up while I was at the edge of the driveway. I thought maybe he'd at least wave or say hello, but no. He honked at me to move so he could park in his spot. "Seriously?" I said, stepping out of the way. "Sorry, didn't see you." That's another thing, he's always making comments about my house. "Must have gotten some family money to afford this," he said once when I was outside pulling weeds. Another time he asked, "You win the lottery or something?" I told him I work from home and he just didn't believe it. "Oh, right, you're one of those people who works from home. Must be nice." I didn't respond because what's the point? People like him don't listen. This morning was final. I was on a video call and my dog started barking like crazy. I muted the call, looked out the window, and saw him walking through the yard again. I ran to the door and opened it, but by the time I got outside, he was already getting into his truck. He saw me standing there, hands on my hips, and gave me this exaggerated wave like we're friends. Then he drove off without a care in the world. I'm at my wit's end. I've tried being polite. I've tried ignoring it. None of it works. I don't want to escalate things, but I'm tired of being disrespected. What do I do now? So yesterday was another disaster. I had just settled into my morning routine, coffee, checking emails, the usual. And there it was again, the sound of an engine roaring outside my house. At first, I thought maybe it was someone else, maybe a delivery truck or a landscaping service. But no, I peeked out the window and sure enough, there he was, riding his damn dirt bike across my yard like it's a dirt track. I threw on my shoes and went outside. He must have seen me, but instead of stopping, he did a few more circles like he was showing off. By the time I got close enough to yell, he killed the engine and casually swung his leg off the bike like he had all the time in the world. "What is this now, a racetrack?" He leaned against the bike. "It's just for fun, lighten up." "On my property? Are you serious?" "It's good for the grass," he said, pointing to the tracks he'd already worn into the lawn. "Aerates it." "Get off my lawn." "Relax, it's not like I'm building a ramp or anything." "You're tearing up my yard." He waved me off and walked his bike back toward his house. I stood there watching him, too angry to speak. An hour later, I saw him again, this time on foot. I was on a conference call when my dog started barking like crazy. I checked the camera feed and there he was, just strolling through the backyard. I muted my call and ran to the back door. "Can you not?" I shouted. "What's the big deal?" "You're in my backyard." "It's a shortcut." "Go around." "That's out of my way. This is faster." I went back inside, but I couldn't focus on anything after that. Every time I tried to get back to work, I kept thinking about him out there, treating my yard like it was part of his. Later in the afternoon, I heard another commotion. This time it wasn't him, it was my dog going nuts at the window. I looked outside and saw his wife. She was carrying a laundry basket and cutting across my front yard. I walked outside and said, "Does everyone in your family think my yard is public property? I just needed to get to the garage. Use your own yard. I'm serious." She didn't argue, she just kept walking. I thought that might be the end of it for the day, but of course I was wrong. That evening, I was outside watering the plants when I noticed his truck parked even closer to my driveway than usual. It was practically blocking it. I walked over and stared at it for a minute, trying to decide if I should knock on his door or just let it go. Before I could decide, he came outside. "Something wrong?" "Yeah. You're parked too close, move it." "It's fine where it is. It's blocking my driveway." "No, it's not. You've got plenty of room." I wasn't about to argue with him anymore. "If it's here tomorrow, I'm calling someone to tow it." "Good luck with that." And then he went back inside, leaving his truck exactly where it was. I didn't call anyone to tow it, but I made sure to set my cameras to full sensitivity that night. I didn't want any surprises. This morning, I woke up to find tire marks in the grass where his truck had been. I don't even know how to deal with this anymore. Every time I try to stand up for myself, he doubles down. What's worse is that now it feels like his whole family's in on it. First him, then his wife, and who knows what's next. I'm starting to wonder if I should have moved somewhere else. This neighborhood seemed so peaceful at first, but now it feels like a nightmare. I thought maybe things would calm down after the last time I confronted him, but it only got worse. Yesterday, I was cleaning up the front yard, picking up some fallen branches after a storm, when I saw him standing in his driveway. He was staring at me like he wanted me to notice him. I ignored it and kept working, but the second I turned my back, he walked over. "You're doing all that by yourself?" he said. "Yep. You could hire someone, you know, bet you've got the money for it." I dropped the branch I was holding and turned to face him. "What is your problem? You don't know anything about me, so stop making comments like that." It was a joke. "Relax." "Yeah, well, I'm not laughing. Go home." He wandered back to his driveway, but not before making some loud comment to himself about people who can't take a joke. Later that afternoon, I was working in the backyard when I heard voices. At first, I thought it was someone on the other side of the fence, but then I realized it was him, on my side. He had his phone on speaker and was walking through the yard like it was nothing. "Hey," I yelled, "get out of my yard!" He looked up from his phone and held up a finger like he needed a minute to finish what he was saying. "No, I'm serious," I said, walking toward him. "Get out, now." "Hold on," he said into the phone. Then to me, "Why are you always yelling? Calm down, I'm just passing through." "This is trespassing. You don't get to just pass through." "I'll call you back," he said, then turned back to me. "What's your deal? It's not like I'm camping out here or something." "I shouldn't have to explain this to you. It's my yard, stay out of it." He said something I didn't catch and walked off. I stood there watching him until he was back on his side. That evening, I was watering the flowers in the front yard when his wife came outside. She looked at me, then at her phone, then back at me. Finally, she said, "You know, he's not trying to upset you." "Could have fooled me," I said. "He just doesn't think it's a big deal. You know how guys are." "No, I don't, because most people respect other people's property." She didn't have an answer for that. She just stood there for a minute, then went back inside without saying anything else. I thought that would be the end of it for the day, but later that night, I heard something outside. I turned on the porch light and saw his truck parked halfway into my yard. Not near it, in it. I took a flashlight and stormed outside. "What the hell is this?" I shouted. He came outside, rubbing the back of his neck like he was confused. "What's the problem?" "Your truck is on my lawn." "Yeah, I didn't have space in my driveway." "Park on the street then." "This is closer." "Move it." He stood there for a moment like he was debating whether or not to argue. Then he finally sighed and got in the truck. He revved the engine and backed it up, but instead of putting it in the street, he parked it so close to my driveway that I couldn't even pull out without maneuvering around him. "There," he said, climbing out. "Happy?" "No, I want you to stop treating my property like it's yours." He didn't answer. He just walked back inside and shut the door. I went inside and tried to calm down, but about an hour later, I heard voices outside again. I looked out the window and saw him in my yard with two other guys. One of them was holding a beer. I threw on a jacket and ran outside. "What the hell are you doing?" "Chill out," one of the guys said. "We're just talking." "On my lawn?" "It's a nice spot," my neighbor said. "Go talk over there." The other guy laughed. "Wow, she's intense." "Yeah," my neighbor said. "She's been on my case ever since I moved in." "Because you don't respect boundaries," I yelled. All right, we're leaving. Don't get your panties in a twist." The three of them walked off, still laughing, and I went back inside. I don't know what it's going to take to get through to him, but I'm running out of options. This morning started with me nearly stepping on a piece of trash in my front yard. At first, I thought it was just something the wind blew in, but as I got closer, I realized it was an empty beer can, one of the same kinds the guys had been holding when they were standing in my yard the night before. I looked around and saw two more near the flower bed. I picked them up, fuming, and walked straight to my neighbor's door. I banged on it hard enough to make the glass rattle. He opened it still in his pajama pants, holding a cup of coffee. "What's up?" "These were in my yard," I said, holding up the cans. "So?" "So they're your trash. They're just cans. Throw them out." "Why don't you?" "Because I didn't leave them there. You and your friends were in my yard last night. Where else would they have come from?" "Maybe the wind blew them in." "Are you kidding me? You're really getting worked up over nothing," he said, then shut the door in my face. I stood there for a second, then went back to my house. I wasn't about to let him ruin my day, but it didn't stop there. Around noon, I was cleaning up the backyard when I heard the sound of something hitting the side of my house. I walked around to the side and saw a soccer ball rolling across the grass. I looked up and there he was, standing in his yard with his son, who couldn't have been older than 7 or 8. He waved at me like nothing was wrong. "Hey, can you toss that back?" I picked up the ball and walked toward the property line. "Your son's ball?" "Yeah," he said. "He didn't mean to kick it over." I threw it back, and before I could say anything, his son kicked it right back into my yard. Oops. I walked back to grab the ball again, but this time I didn't throw it. I walked straight to my garage and put it inside. "What the hell? That's my kid's ball. Tell him to stop kicking it into my yard. He's a kid. What do you expect?" "I expect you to teach him to respect other people's property." "You're unbelievable." I went back inside and ignored him, but not long after, I heard a knock at my door. I opened it and saw his wife standing there, holding the kid's hand. "Can we please have the ball back?" she asked. I handed it over without saying anything, but before she left, she said, "He's just a boy. Try to cut him some slack." I didn't answer. Later that afternoon, I was sitting on the porch when I noticed my neighbor dragging his trash cans down the driveway. He stopped near the curb and looked over at me. "Enjoying the view?" he called out. "Just sitting outside." "Well, since you're out here, maybe you can explain why you're always in my business." "Your business?" "Yeah. Every time I step foot over here, you're on my case. Every time I say anything, you overreact. It's like you're obsessed with me." "Obsessed? You're the one who can't stay out of my yard? It's not that serious. You act like I'm committing a crime or something." "It is a crime. It's called trespassing. You really need to get a hobby." That night, I heard noises in the backyard again. I grabbed a flashlight and went out to see what it was. When I got out there, I found another soccer ball, this time right in the middle of my flower bed. One of the solar lights was knocked over and there were footprints in the dirt. I picked up the ball and walked to his house. I didn't bother knocking. I just dropped it in front of his door and left. When I got back to my house, I checked the camera footage. Sure enough, it showed his son climbing over the fence to retrieve the ball, stomping through the flower bed on his way out. I thought about going over there to confront him, but I decided to let it go. For now. This morning, I walked out to find something new. A pile of lawn clippings dumped right in the middle of my driveway. It wasn't there last night, and there's no way it was an accident. I looked over at my neighbor's yard, and sure enough, his grass looked freshly mowed. I knew it was him. I knocked on his door. He opened it after a minute, sipping coffee like nothing was wrong. "Why are your lawn clippings in my driveway?" "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb. I woke up and there's a pile of grass in my driveway. It's from your yard." "Prove it." I stared at him, then turned and walked back to my house. I took a rake and started cleaning it up, bagging the clippings as I went. When I was almost done, he came outside. "Doing my job for me, huh?" I ignored him. "Should I thank you?" I kept raking. When I finished, I carried the bag to his driveway and dumped it right in the middle. He was still standing there watching me. "You're cleaning that up," I said. "No, I'm not." "Fine. I'll call someone who will." "Good luck with that." I walked back to my house and took my phone, but instead of calling anyone, I just sat at the table staring out the window. I was so fed up with him, but I didn't want to escalate things again. Later that afternoon, I decided I'd had enough. I went to the hardware store and bought some no trespassing signs, along with a few stakes to put them on. I spent the next hour hammering them into the ground along the property line. While I was working, I heard his voice behind me. "What's all this?" I didn't look at him. "You're putting up signs? Seriously?" "Yes," I said. "You can't seem to respect boundaries, so now they're official." "You think some little signs are going to stop me?" I didn't respond. That evening, I was sitting in the backyard when I heard shouting from his house. I couldn't make out the words, but it sounded like he and his wife were arguing. A few minutes later, she came outside carrying the baby on her hip. She walked over to the fence and called out to me. "I'm sorry about him," she said. "He's stubborn." "He's more than stubborn," I said. "I know. I've been trying to get him to stop, but he doesn't listen to me either. If he keeps it up, just call the cops. Maybe that'll wake him up." I nodded. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of a truck idling outside. I looked out the window and saw his work truck parked in its usual spot, right next to my driveway. He was sitting in the driver's seat, scrolling on his phone. I walked outside and stood on the porch, waiting for him to notice me. When he finally looked up, I pointed at the no trespassing sign closest to his truck. "What's that supposed to mean?" he shouted. "It means stay off my property. You've got too much time on your hands. I'll make time to call the cops if you step foot on my yard again." He looked at me for a moment, then started laughing. He pulled away and sped off down the street. That afternoon, I checked the cameras. No activity in the yard, no tire tracks, no beer cans. It's been 3 days now, and I haven't seen him once. For the first time in months, my yard is quiet. I don't know if he finally got the message or if he's just biding his time, but either way, I'll be ready if he tries anything else. Thanks for watching. If you liked the story, hit subscribe. See you in the next one.